Hello, welcome to our radar practice group. Hope everybody's well today. Nice to see everybody again, although I can't see you, you can only see me. But nice to imagine seeing you anyway. So last week we were reading and contemplating Rinpoche's advice on family and parenting. So the next question is, how can parents strike a balance between gentleness and discipline with children? Rinpoche responds, parenting requires considering how to benefit our children and offer them the best opportunities. We have to assess their short and long-term needs and respond to anything they do or say that might be harmful. We discipline children not for our sake, but for their sake. We must teach them not to argue, fight, or use harsh words. If they don't listen, we have to set some guidelines. If your child wants to play in the street and you have to keep bringing him back to the sidewalk, it may be necessary to spank him or use another disciplinary method to keep him there. However, your motivation must always be based on a good heart. In an environment devoid of loving kindness, gentleness, or trust, any attempt to discipline children will only make them more anxious, disturbed, and emotional. But assuming that they have developed a strong sense of security in an environment of loving care, if they do something harmful, the use of wrath can sometimes be appropriate. Coming from deep-hearted compassion and the desire to benefit, wrath can help conquer their pride and anger and avert negative behavior. Discipline motivated by anger won't have the same effect. This is just my approach, a Tibetan approach. Western children are better educated and enjoy more opportunities for entertainment than Tibetan children. Their parents are frequently very permissive, but I've seen that children in the West often do not have enough respect for their parents. In Tibet, we don't have as many diversions. Children don't have as many toys and gadgets, and we're often more strict with them. But as they grow up, they tend to have more respect and appreciation for their parents. So maybe Tibetan ideas about raising children have some merit. In English, we have the saying, spare the rod, spoil the child. When Rinpoche uses the word wrath, it's a unique adaptation of the word in English to describe a state of compassion that manifests itself strongly or even aggressively. So, an example of the difference between a peaceful approach and a wrathful approach is if your child keeps crossing the street and you say, my darling, it's dangerous, please don't do that, without looking, without parental escort, but they don't listen. And finally, out of a place of love and concern, you manifest a more scary, disciplinary posture, maybe even spanking the child, or maybe pulling them strongly by their arm or shaking them to try to get through to them that it's dangerous for them to keep crossing the street without looking. But it's coming always from a place of love. When we meditate on wrathful deities, for example, in the heart of all the wrathful deities is a peaceful deity. Because the wrath always comes from a peaceful place of love and compassion. But there are certain people, certain children, certain beings that don't respond to a peaceful, gentle approach. And in those cases, we have to assume a more direct and wrathful approach. Now, a lot of people think that they're practicing wrath, and it's just ordinary anger. It's quite common. So, how can we tell if we're really coming from a place of wrath and not from just ordinary anger? Well, Rinpoche used to say, if it's truly wrath, where there's no self-interest and no anger involved, then it's like a strong storm that blows through, and afterwards everything's perfectly clear and pristine, and there's no hard feelings and there's been no damage done. If it's one of those things where it's drawn out and there's repercussions and there's bad feelings and then there's revenge and then there's a cycle that kicks into place, then we know it wasn't wrath. And if we have any doubt in our mind at all, what's the difference between wrath and anger? It means that we're really not ready to use wrath. So, as a general policy, if you're ever in doubt, just stick with peaceful and kind, loving kindness approach. Using wrath is very difficult to accomplish in a positive, productive way. You really have to have a very high level of realization. So stick with peaceful and gentle if in doubt, and patience.